Right, well, thank you for your questions. I'm delighted to be here with Slugger O'Toole. Right, first question from Mr. O'Neill in Belfast. In your opinion, has the New Labour devolution project in the UK strengthened or weakened the union? If it is the former, will you extend the benefits of devolution to England? If the latter, how are you going to remedy the situation? Well, complicated answer. I think in some extent, some devolution was necessary because the popular demand had so built up, particularly in Scotland, and we can't go backwards. So my view is we've got to make devolution work. I'll come on to what I mean by that, but first of all, let me answer the English question. I don't want to see a separate English Parliament. I think the last thing we need right now is another bunch of politicians on another bunch of big salaries and pensions and all the rest of it. So I don't think we need an English Parliament. I think, and I've set out elsewhere, how we can correct the so-called West Lothian question, and you can find lots of evidence for how we'd do that. So that's the first question. Second question, do you support academic selection at 11? And if so, why have you abandoned grammar schools in England yet claim to support them here? The point I'd make about this is, what I've said is that where there are grammar schools established, they have nothing to fear from an incoming Conservative government. There are 164 in England. They have nothing to fear. They can continue being grammar schools and continue to succeed as they do. But I do want to spend my time thinking, right, how are we going to improve the 23,000 other schools in the UK? And I don't believe you can turn the clock back and reintroduce selection, reintroduce 11 plus across the country. So I think it'd be pointless to spend the time doing that. Instead, what we should be doing is working out, well, what is the modern equivalent of the grammar school that can bring social mobility, good education for everybody, really high standards, really good discipline? What's the modern equivalent of that? And my answer is actually it's the Swedish education system, where they opened up the state sector, they bust open the state monopoly, they said let's allow new schools to set up within the state sector, and they can attract children and pupils and be funded per pupil, and they can bring competition, choice and diversity to education in a non-selective way. And I think that's what we should do here in the UK. But as I've said, grammar schools have nothing to fear from a Conservative government where they're established. Third question, how does current Conservative policy on restraining public spending sit with the fact that almost every major economy is planning some kind of stimulus package? Well, first of all, on the stimulus package issue, if you actually look across the world, and if you look at what the international bodies are saying, you find something quite different to what you've been told. If you actually look at what the IMF, the OECD, the European Central Bank and others are saying, they're saying it's good to have a stimulus package if you can afford it. It's good if your public finances are in good shape. The problem is our public finances are in a terrible shape. We are borrowing £78 billion this year, £118 billion next year, £105 billion the year after. And by the way, that money doesn't include the money necessary for the recapitalisation of the banking system, the rescue of Northern Rock and the rest of it. So we have a very serious fiscal situation here. And that was actually betrayed by the government in the pre-budget report when they said, okay, here's our stimulus, we're cutting VAT, to stimulate the economy, but at the same time, because the deficit's so bad, they had to announce future tax increases. And I would argue that cutting taxes on spending when prices are already falling and then telling people about future tax increases, that is not exactly very stimulating. And so I think the problem in the UK is the scale of the debt we have, the appalling deficit we have this year and next year, all because Gordon Brown failed to fix the roof while the sun was shining, shows that actually a fiscal stimulus is not the right answer here in the UK. Just looking at other countries, quite interesting that both Germany and Japan, two of the world's largest economies, have recently spoken out against a fiscal stimulus because they worry all it will do is add to already very high public debt levels, and you're left with the debt, the certainty of the debt, but you're not given much certainty about the stimulus. So I think that's important. Conservative policy on restraining public spending, well, yes, we do need to restrain the growth of public spending because I want to make sure that we can lift the threat of tax rises from people. I think that is what people need and want now. They're worried about family finances, they're worried about the economy, and they know with the huge levels of debt that have built up in the UK economy, the threat of tax rises is very real. Now, the government's told them that they're going to put up national insurance contributions, not just on rich people, but on anyone earning over £19,000. I want us to try and stop those tax rises, and in order to do that, we're going to have to cut out waste in public spending, we're going to have to restrain the growth of public spending, we're going to have to reform our public services, and we're also going to have to try and relieve some burdens from the state. And that is where the social reform comes in, because the truth is we will never get public spending under control, we'll never get our deficit under control while we have so much family breakdown, so much drug and alcohol abuse, so many of the social problems we have. Those are the causes of the high public spending, and we need to deal with those causes. Sorry about the long answer to the question, but I wanted to give you a fair crack. Thank you very much for asking those questions, and if you're not happy with the answers, you can email me at camerond@parliament.uk, and I'll try and do better. Thanks.